internationally, you know, when it talks about the Congo, it's everything except nothing. I mean, you talk about conflict, you talk about natural resources, you talk about fragile states, you talk about rape, you talk about poverty, and you talk about economic growth, you talk about child soldiers, and then you talk about uranium and everything. So for me, it's quite interesting to talk about it from, first of all, a social scientist perspective and Congolese perspective and as a human being. So basically, it incorporates all this stuff. Last year, I had an opportunity of presenting during one-day conference at the University of Cape Town, where people are talking about the Congo, and the topic was Democratic Republic of Congo, one country, different stories. And I had to talk about the role, which are called negative role of media in the Congo or on the Congo, and how internationally the way the country is being presented affects in one way or another in terms of direct investments or political analysis. So today, when I started this project, this is actually part of one of the projects I started in 2012, looking on how some regional policies can be used to deal with the conflict in the Congo, and how those policies can be implemented at the national level as well as regional level. So during this presentation, I will touch one main policies which has two legs or two programs, and we will move from that. I don't know which type of philosophy from the presentation you would like. Is it like I go up to the end, or you can stop you whenever you want? If you have a specific question to ask, and then we move. So I'm open to both approach. Yeah, we're talking about the Congo. The rationale of this presentation basically is around understanding conflict resolution and community development in the Great Lakes region of Africa, as well as assessing existing regional policies, kind of framework and program for peace, and the impact of the UN in the Democratic Republic of Congo. At that point, I should say, when you talk about the UN, currently the most costly program of the UN, the biggest mission of the UN in the world since the creation or establishment of the UN is happening right now in the Congo. And it's been there for the past, if I'm not mistaken, 13 years. So basically, putting billions of dollars in a country which stinks. So we can ask ourselves if the UN is doing a good job or not, since, you know, you talk about UNDP, you talk about UNESCO, UNICEF, and the military intervention and everything happening in the Congo, yet the country is still fragile and the security is kind of increasing at some extent. So you ask yourself if the UN is doing a good job or not. If you say, okay, the UN is a bureaucratic institution, then we can say, who are backing the UN, and those guys, are they doing a good job or not? Or they're trying to keep the Congo that way for some economic, political, or any other interest. In terms of a conceptual framework, during the presentation we have three main concepts: peace building, because we'll be talking about that. We have conflict resolution, and we have regional transformation. That's why I said we basically need some regional policies for the region at large and the country by itself. On the conflict resolution, I highlighted one point, with main conflicts as a result of unmet basic human needs, unequal power dynamics and resources, unequal structural arrangement that needs to be addressed. So basically, when you talk from an understanding, when you talk about the Congo at some extent, it's all about how the natural resources, how about the resources that are available in the country have helped to either promote conflict, and how can we use the same tool or the same resources that are promote conflict to be resources for peace building. So it's quite an interesting dynamics where you see, for instance, the same pain you use to give somebody 0, and then you need to use the same pen to give the same person 10. So trying to understand if there is a way of using natural resources as means for peace building and conflict resolution. Where is the Congo? Congo is in Africa. As you can see, Africa currently has 53 countries. So it's not a country, it's a continent. I know we all know that. It's a continent, but unfortunately, many of the policies toward Africa are kind of focused in such a way that Africa appears to be like a country. On that point, I will touch 2 of them. There is this China-Africa cooperation. You know, China is a country, Africa is a continent, but we talk about China-Africa cooperation. We talk about the current one with President Obama. We talk about US-Africa cooperation, and then there was another one, Europe-Africa cooperation as well. So for me, that already shows how challenging this partnership or this understanding of partnership with Africa is. Because when you talk about US-Africa cooperation, and you talk specifically about energy issues, you understand that the need for energy, for instance, for South Africa down there, is not the same with the Congo. It's not either the same with Ghana, somewhere, or Ivory Coast, or Algeria. So basically, you cannot use one policy to implement or trying to implement that same policy all over Africa. So it's a big challenge, and I do believe that at some extent we as humans, we can think about it and try to promote context-based policy. That's actually the reason why I like the policy issues as well. And there is a thing that I wanted to highlight. It's not, I know it's not part of the program, the presentation, because talking about the Congo, but I wanted you to see something when you talk, for instance, about the conflict in Somalia, and it's kind of an ongoing conflict, and terrorism is coming down. We see that closeness in Somalia and Yemen, it should give you from a geostrategy perspective, should give you actually a look and understand that because they are so close, that can have direct impact on terrorism. And because we talk about the Congo, there is an issue of terrorism as well in the Congo, but it's not that open because it's not that big. The reason why it is because you have Yemen, you have Somalia, then you have Kenya, and then you move here, you have Tanzania, Uganda, and then suddenly South Sudan is quite a fragile state as well right now, and it has border with the Congo and the eastern part of the Congo, which apparently seems to be weak. And here's the Congo. It's one country with 9 neighboring countries. The second biggest country in Africa right now. It's obvious that the relationship with Angola, for instance, won't be the same with Congo, Brazil. It's obvious as well that the relationship with Zambia and Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, South Sudan, and up there, Central African Republic won't be the same all over. So basically, when you see, for instance, Central African Republic being weak, it should have direct impact on the Congo. When you have issue with Rwanda, you have issue in Tanzania, Uganda, South Sudan, Congo, Brazil, Angola, Zambia. All these issues have direct link with the Congo in one way or another. And instability in the Congo affects as well all these 9 countries. The conflict in the Congo, it has been going on for so many years. But mostly, the big challenge is in the North Kivu and South Kivu, which is the eastern parts of the country and sharing borders with Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi. Why why is this part of the country so weak? That probably should be the first question we can ask ourselves. Why is it so weak? And why is the conflict happening that side more than everywhere else? You will recall with me that in 1994, during the genocides in Rwanda, the international community and some of the regional community decided or requested to the Congolese government to open its borders to accommodate refugees and people who are kind of moving or running away from Rwanda. Few of them went down south, Burundi, and Uganda. I say few because these countries are kind of small and they couldn't accommodate many of them. And crossing the border from Rwanda to Goma or to Kivu is like 5 or 10-minute walk because you don't have strong, it's not a long distance. So it was much easier for them to move from Rwanda and get in the Congo. And during that time, as the international community and UN reports stipulate that many of the guys who flew from that place to the Congo had some weapons. And they were trying to get ready to go back in Rwanda and establish the country. This is one of the theories. I'm not arguing about that because I don't have much evidence. But this is kind of one of the reality. And since they moved in, and later on 2 years later in 1996, President Mobutu was not helpful anymore. I know these names, probably I just, I'm putting them. Was not helpful anymore, and the international community wanted to put him aside. And the best way to remove him wasn't through diplomacy or anything, because he has been ruling the country for 35 years, so it wasn't easy for him to start another life. He grew up president. So, and the idea was we need to use force to remove him. And for that, we really need to look at weak link, weak areas that he had, and put money in that and this stuff like that. So basically, the only area where it was much easier for the international community to penetrate was already open since 1994, and that was the eastern part of the country. So that's why all this, rebellion movement started that side. And it was so interesting because it didn't have strong army, all the generals and everything were there since 1960 something, so they were not used to fight anymore. And the best way to remove them was to get young boys and guys because they were still having fresh blood. And I recall by the time they reached my city, I'm somewhere here called Kolwezi. By the time they reached my city, I saw some guys who were almost my age and younger than me, just to say we had sharp soldiers, right? We had I had many of my friends who then back then enrolled in army. I don't know where they are today, so it's quite a long story. I don't know, probably they're working somewhere or not. So it was quite interesting to see that all this conflict thing happen and get involved everyone, because people were like, okay, it's a new movement. We need to put him aside. But what we didn't understand that it would be a long-term conflict, because when you change the structure, which has been in place for 35 years, it's not an easy move to establish a new one for a long term. And the current state of affairs is kind of political instability, governance, which someone will say it's weak, no, and then someone will say, okay, the governance system, I'm talking about government, the governance system is probably weak or not. And yeah, of course, we talk about insecurity, we talk about underdevelopment, we talk about promising economic growth, as I said in the beginning. But currently, the Congo is one of the fast-growing states in Africa with a growth of 7%, 7 to 8% annually, which is quite interesting. But the equation of that one is as well as like, is the macroeconomic growth reflects the social and economic development at the grassroots. That is the issue. We can have all these numbers, so okay, we're making billions, but since we have what people are very poor, so we can now try to figure out if that has great impact or not, if we can rely on economic development at the macro level as a great indicator of development. And yes, we have another interesting issue, the peace or justice. I put it that way because, you know, internationally we have this debate of either we promote peace or we promote justice. And when you have strong institutions, it's easier to promote justice at the expense of peace. Because anyway, no one will use weapons because you have good institutions. But when you are in the middle of conflict or post-conflict country, you need to make a rational choice. Either you can promote peace or you promote justice. And for some years, the promotion of peace in the Congo hasn't shown great results because it has been creating government with the former guys who were against the government coming in, and then when they're not satisfied, they went back again using the same, you know. It has been like, we had a junta, we had all this M23, all these guys were part of that, one of the integration process to some extent. And today, they are getting amnesty. Still have a big question, that's a personal level, still have a big question if these guys will really be good citizens and if we are doing justice the right way. Because at the end of it, if they're not satisfied with government, they have a warrior mentality, it's easier for them to go back and use weapons against the government again. So this is one of the interesting things, and unfortunately, all this time when the government and the regional organizations were promoting justice, they were backed up by, or they were promoting peace, they were backed up by the UN and the international community. I don't want to say UN, let's say international community, because one day I want to work for UN as well. to prepare my career, so you know. So just say, they promote peace at the expense of justice. And that didn't work the right way. Why are we talking about the Congo and why do we need to have a focus on conflict resolution and community development? That's my main interest today in this presentation as way forward in peace building in the Congo. We don't need, I believe that we don't need to only promote one side of the coin. We need to work on both sides like the way. We have conflict resolution, the CR stands for conflict resolution, and the CD for community development. And I consider it as a convergence approach for peace building in the Congo. And this is one of the reports from OCHA, which was in 2011 report showing how some parts of the country were weak in terms of people moving around, you know, instability and so on. So it's quite interesting to look at that and see how people have been moving from one province or one region to another because of instability. And it also showed how government or governance is a little bit weak, but yet it's doing a good job right now. So I need to promote that one also because I want to go back home one day. You know, it's kind of interesting when you talk about conflict and countries which seems to be, you know, good and bad at the same time. And you have the same convergence approach in Ituri, which is part of the eastern part, a little bit high. And a very interesting part of this region is because it shares border with South Sudan. I will reach that point later on. Why is it important to look at this? Because in 2003, this region was volatile, very unstable, and everything was happening, and the EU and the international community had to intervene with the leading of France to stop the killing. So, but it has border with South Sudan, and I think we need to triangulate the conflict resolution approach with community development. And at the regional level, you can stop me if you have a question or can continue. At the regional level, because the conflict in the Congo has, as I said at the beginning, had some regional implications since the country shares border with 9 countries. And the community, international community are also interested. There is a policy called Pact on Security, Stability, and Development in the Great Lakes region. This pact has many programs, and I selected 2 of them, which actually merge with what we're talking about today. This pact has one program called, sorry, I need to go down quickly. One called Development of Border Zones and Promotion of Human Security. This actually shows the economic approach in this regional policy. And the development of border zone and promotion of human security have made impact in the Congo, because the Congo seems to be one of the countries which needs basically to be more weak. And the second program is called Disarmament and Repatriation of Armed Groups in the eastern part of the country. So this then comes in with the peace or use of force as one of the mechanisms for peace building. So at some extent, you see that at the regional level, there is already a framework for peace building in the region at large and in Congo specifically, which promotes development or economic integration and also promote the use of force in case we have these guys such as M23 and other guys who are using FDLR and other LRI and so on. So basically, there is already a framework. But where do we have the challenge? Because if there is a framework, we have strong institutions at the regional level, we have backup for the UN, we have all countries wanting to see the Congo coming out of the conflict. Where's the challenge? I think the challenge is here. We have one project which is the matter of repatriation, basically use of force. And then you have a second project, which is development of border zone. And remember, when you do these 2, you have different stakeholders involved. For this one, you have what we call in the Congo MONUSCO, which is kind of the UN mission using force and everything. And you have all these, this is the government, and you have all these agencies working in the context of humanitarian and peace building context. And then you have the other side, still with some UN and other international organizations, such as UNDP, UNICEF, NGOs, and all government agencies, working in the context of community development, the context of social and economic development. But the big challenge is like they all work under the same umbrella of this policy, but they don't coordinate. So basically, they don't work together. You know, you have a UNDP office which designs its whole intervention program in the same region. And then you have MONUSCO, you have the EU, which designs its whole intervention program in the same region. And then when they found themselves on the grounds, they don't speak to each other in such a way that they cooperate and they have the same goals. And as results, what I call achievement in Ituri, that specific region, as results, you still have fragile peace. And you have relapse into conflict and underdevelopment. And then we ask ourselves, why do we have a UN mission, which has been investing millions and millions, yet they are not effective or efficient in the work? And you have our partners in international NGOs who are not apparently effective. This should be probably one of the main issues that we need to look at. Are they having an integrated approach? And that is my second draft or something like that, where I think this can help a long way. You have the same policy. You know, sometimes we change policies all the time, and we think that this one didn't work, and then we need to upgrade it, and at the end of it, we will lose focus, and then we don't have good results. I think this is the issue. We need probably to use the same policy, same project, same program. But then you have this, I call it that way, integrated peace building process. I call it that way. Why? Because I think that once these two projects speak to each other, these stakeholders communicate with the government as well, with community, and trying to design one project at a time for this specific community, kind of doing a context-based approach in development and peace building will have this result, which is expected, you know, kind of sustainable peace, and that will raise socio-economic development, human security, local and regional development. And then I said I would touch a little bit on Ituri. It shares borders with, you know, with South Sudan, and again somehow with Uganda, and down here, you know, Uganda here, then this is kind of a lake called Lake Albert, shared border again with Uganda, and then, you know, half there is like kind of communities and so on. But what's amazing is that I wanted to understand it from the regional perspective and regional integration perspective and how this can help to build security in this region. As I said, when you have instability in South Sudan, it has impact in the Congo. When you have instability here, there's impact up there as well as the other side. But this region is quite rich in natural resources. It has land, there's water, it has everything. So I think, for instance, with South Sudan, this is just part of my personal suggestion. We have kind of an open land, which you can do a cross-border farming activity. Hiring people from South Sudan and the Congo. And I must say, these people are almost the same. Probably some same tribes, because the only difference is like just borders. So at some extent, it's easier to get them involved in one activity. And once they start working on a similar project, they won't be fighting, I do believe. And then you have with Uganda, you have two borders. You have one, it's like an open land, which has also resources. We can use mining activity, where Uganda take profit and the Congo take profit, and you have Ugandan people working on the ground, Congolese people working together, and this would promote security as well as regional development in terms of economic development. And then down here you have Congo and Uganda, you have water. There is an ongoing debate right now where the Uganda government decided to give the deal for oil to another company, and the Congolese government wanted as well to give the deal to another company, yet they will be working on the same lake. So, you know, it becomes like a conflict at the international perspective where we have different internationals. But if, for instance, you have a good deal and you give the same project to one country or one international or multinational company, which will pay tax on this side, that side, I do believe that we would not have much of a conflict. So basically, this was just to show how sharing borders with other countries can help to promote the second leg, which was economic development, and subsequently have impact on peace process and peace building. Yes, sir.
What is the incentive for Uganda to do this instead of continuing predatory practices that they've been doing so far? Uganda and Rwanda, especially, they can come into the Congo and just take what they want and then go back and export it. I'm thinking the most blatant example of this is Rwanda and coltan. They have no naturally occurring coltan, yet somehow they manage to export coltan. So I wonder, what's the incentive for the other countries, Uganda, Rwanda, to stop what they're doing and to do this?
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting question. As I said at some point, when the Congo is not okay, Uganda will not be okay, and Rwanda won't be okay at all. So they, of course, they have their own national interests, but that national interest won't be long term. It won't kind of create long-term benefit if they don't partner. Because today, based on what was happening in the eastern parts, and the international community started cutting off the support to Rwanda, and it had quite devastating impact on the national budget. And then I think that's where probably they need, at some extent, to partner with the Congo. But yet, you cannot partner with somebody who apparently doesn't show the healthy relationship in terms of having strong infrastructure and strong institutions. But that's why there is a need of regional approach in the conflict, saying we can work together to promote that and make sure that peace is promoted. That way, I think Uganda and Rwanda probably should cooperate at that extent. Yeah, this was, I don't know, different point. And in terms of lessons, throughout this presentation, I think that good policy must be inclusive and address root causes of instability. And secondly, conflict in the Great Lakes region of Africa and the DRC in particular requires a holistic and integrated approach. It's not only about having a strong government. It's more about getting people involved as well. And people should feel free and ownership of the development process and pace, because you cannot have a top-down approach all the time. Because those who are dealing or fighting every day are probably the most poor people in the country. That's why I have, that first picture. I'll go back to that, where you see you have a mind, with people, and they appear already poor and yet with guns. So I mean, this is kind of a survival strategy. But if you can promote something from the grassroots level, it will have great impact. And then you have, I say, conflict resolution mechanism cannot be standardized and generalized everywhere. The Congo has more than 200 ethnic groups, and we speak almost 400 dialects. So that shows how diverse the country is and how culturally people are different. So you cannot take the same approach that you want to build with peace in New York, referring to the UN headquarters, and then trying to implement it in Syria, trying to implement it in Egypt, in the Congo, and even when you use the same thing in the Congo, it needs to be context-based. You need to know why you're doing it, and at what extent you think that will have an impact on that specific region. And then, that many failures of peace building in the DRC are due to the fragmented and coordinated solution by all stakeholders. So it's not about only government. I know many people talk about government, we government, but the government is one of the many stakeholders involved in peace building. So by the time things will come together and people work together, I believe that things can easily change. And then my conclusion is a blank page. Blank page. Why? Because I think it's not one. It's not one thing. I say it's a context-based approach, and it's open to everyone to feel it. So I think that was part of it. The first open, the question, comment, more welcome.